Lesson 3.2 extension. Now it's on factoring and expressions, which you can see when we look down here in our standard. It's in our standard down here, a factor. And when you scroll down, you can see it's one of our skills, also our vocab here. And what we're really doing today is we're just basically going to undistribute. So when we talk about distribution, that's where we had a number out front and we had to distribute to it. We're just going to go backwards. We're going to take and we're going to make something that looks like this instead of distributing. As we look at our definitions, factoring is writing as a product of factors. Again, the definition, having the word in it, not always nice. So if you want to just make the note that, again, product means that we're going to have multiplying here. And factors is just numbers. So we're going to write as numbers being multiplied. So again, if you wanted to write that on in too, you could. You don't need to. And underneath that screen, you can see it. Now, we've got our greatest common factor, but before I get there, let me spell that right. Factoring, factors would be just as numbers. But underneath the screen, you can see GCF stands for greatest common factor, greatest common factor. So it's the largest factor, that's the largest number that goes into both terms, both items. So that's the largest number that you can divide into both numbers. So let's take a look. You can see a bunch of examples in front of you, but we're focused on this one first. The whole time, we've always said don't subtract, add the opposite. Now, please put parentheses down. What we want to do is we want to factor out. We want to take and pull something out of both 6 and 7 and put that out here in the front. We're going to pull something out, and we're going to use that GCF. So what is the largest number in common with them? You see it right away. We move on, and we're done. Great, but what I want to do is I want to walk us through it again. Start with number 2. 2 is even. Are they both even? No. So 2 is not a factor, nor will any other evens be. Caution, watch 3. 3 is often one that is missed. Can 3 go into both 6 and 27? Yes, 3 can. 4 does not work since it's even. 5 does not go into both of them. And there's no need to ask about 7 because 7 is more than 6. So your GCF then is the number 3. So pull that out, factor it out. And now right above here, if you could do me a favor, write in your notes, if you could just write down 6 divided by 3. We need to factor out that 3. So 6 divided by 3 gives us 2x. And then same thing, right here in your notes, right above that negative 27, write in negative 27 divided by 3. And if you don't have room there, you write larger than that. You can go up to the top or off to the side. You have more room than what I have here on my screen. But we're going to factor out. We're pulling out. We're taking that 27, that negative 27, and dividing it by our factor out here, our GCF. And that's where we come up with this negative 9. And that's it. That's what we're doing. So you can box that on up. That is the answer. Again, we got a couple more over here. Let's jump to this one here quick first. But when we look behind there, it doesn't matter if they have large numbers or not. When they've got large numbers, we just work with them anyways. So you start with it. 2, yes, works, but there's more that work. 4 works, 6 works, 8 does not work. So you try to find that largest GCF, that greatest common factor, the largest number that can come out of both of them. And it happens to be 12. Again, just right above that 36, sneak on in. We need to factor the 12 out. So divide the 36 by 12. That's where that 3 comes in. And we're going to take that 48 and factor a 12 out as well. So that's where the 4z comes into play. And as you're looking, look here inside the parentheses. When you're looking there, is there anything that can come out of both 4 and 3? Is there a common factor besides 1? There is not. So we have done it correctly. We have found the greatest common factor. If there's something else that comes out of both of these, then we've missed the greatest common factor. And you should either start on over or there's a way to multiply those factors out front to make sure we get the right answer. Don't worry about the fractions, even though fractions we've talked about in class, most of us don't like. We want to be done with fractions. The nice thing is there's 1. Everybody say 1? Well, in class, I'd make you say 1. There's going to be one nice one. So here in our homework, oftentimes they say factor out the coefficient. So the coefficient. Again, no shame in sounding it out. Your math teacher has to do the same thing. The coefficient is the thing, the number, or in this case, the fraction in front of the variable. Please circle up the 1/5 and pull it out front. 1/5 is going to be our factor. Our instructions with fractions just say factor out the coefficient. So then the thing is, we get one nice one. Because in class I talked about very quickly, 5 divided by 5 is 1. 10 divided by 10 is 1. 20 divided by 20 is 1. So when we look at 1/5 divided by 1/5, we get 1x. That's the nice one. See the correlation there, the number 1 and one term that is nice. Now the downside is up here, we need to take 4/5 and we need to factor out, we need to divide out 1/5. But when we see that, remember, we do not divide fractions. We're going to multiply by the reciprocal. So over here, I'm just going to rewrite it fast. I'm going to switch it over to 4/5 times 5/1. You're welcome to do your fraction dance where you take the top times the top and the bottom times the bottom. But before you do that, if nothing else, could you please cross cancel the 5s out? That'll make life a lot easier. So then now when you multiply it, you get 4/1, which is just plain 4. There's your answer. Again, fractions may not be our favorite, but when you're looking at them, you're going to have one nice one. So once you put the parentheses down, find that coefficient. So find the term, find the thing with the variable. Again, we're talking these guys as terms right here. Does this guy have a variable, a letter with it, or does this guy have a letter? Since the a's are variable, circle up the 3/4 in front of it and factor that out. Again, you're guaranteed one nice one, but that's not this first one. We would take 3/8 divided by 3/4, but we don't divide fractions. Multiply by the reciprocal. Again, if nothing else, cross out those 3's, make them 1's. You can multiply the top times the top and the bottom times the bottom to get 4/8. You could cross cancel between the 4 and the 8. So that way you don't have to simplify here, but you get the number 1/2. So we're going to plug that on in right here for 1/2. And then here's the nice one. Again, remember, 3/4 divided by 3/4 gives us 1a. We can go through the math for that, but for the video, I'm just going to keep moving along. Again, on your next slide, you can see again why we're doing this. Because every 7th grader with our set standard of 7EE1 has to be able to factor, whether you're in person, online, at Minot, or any other city, you have to be able to do that. It's in our skill. It's one of our vocab. Again, there's that word coefficient we just talked about. And now we got this factor out the negative factor. Over here, Etazapo is something that I talk about in class, but for notes speed's sake, we'll just look at Etazapo and look at it backwards. What word does it spell when you read it backwards? It spells the opposite. So that's all we're going to do. We're going to pull the opposite out of all these. Meaning, first off, don't subtract, add the opposite with that guy. But then there's nothing in common with both 2 and 7. The GCF is 1. So what we're going to factor out is that negative. So please circle up the word negative. Factor out the negative. We're just factoring out the opposite. So again, here we go. What is the opposite of a negative 2x? It's a positive 2x. Plus, what is the opposite of a negative 7? Positive 7. Done. Again, nothing in common between 3 and 8, so factor out the negative like the instructions said. Put your parentheses. But it's not a negative, we're doing the Etazapo. We're pulling the opposite out of these terms. So when you see this, remember, we say it as opposite. So everybody say opposite. Did you say opposite? If not, we'll move it on. If you did, thank you. So this is the opposite. So what is the opposite of a negative 3? Positive 3x. Plus, what's the opposite of 8? A negative 8. That's all Etazapo is, just taking and working it backwards in a sense. Notice between 2 and 4, we've got a GCF of 2. The instruction said to factor a negative out, so make it a negative 2. As you do that, a negative 2 divided by negative 2 gives you 1x, plus 4 divided by negative 2 gives you a negative 2. Done. If there's subtraction in the problem, switch it to adding the opposite. Find the greatest common factor. Notice both of these terms are negative, so we'll factor out a -4 out of both of them, because a -4 divided by 4 is 1x. And caution, mental math or calculator approved, -8 divided by -4 gives you a +2. From there, this one here, match the algebraic expression with its factored form, Two different ways you could do that. Today, we could be working on finding what's the GCF between 12 and 6, and you could factor it out quick. Well, that gets you 12 divided by 6, 2x, plus 6 divided by 6, 1. So then you could find a +6 times the quantity of 2x minus 1, which is the letter C. Great. Or you could come down here if you'd rather. Another strategy, distribute. And tell me that that's that guy. Now again, notice we do add the opposite. Not everybody does. So if that's something new, that's what we do here. So if you go back up here, you can switch these to adding the opposite. So then you can find the -12 and the -6 there. Otherwise, when you keep on going through it, you have to pull out, again, some of these you might have to pull out a -6, it looks like. So when you do that, if you don't want to do that over here with the last two, then just distribute. So again, two different choices on this, like a standardized test quiz. But one more time, we'll come up here. In common between 12 and 6 would be 6. So factor out a 6. You're left with 2x plus a -1. So a +6 plus a -1, that gives us B. So by process of elimination, last one is A. Again, it's in our standard. It is one of our skills, and it is our vocab over there. That's why we are doing this. It's going to help us in our equations. It's going to help you in pre-algebra. It's going to help you in algebra and algebra 2. That's all I want to be able to do. It's a factor linear expressions.